Alright, making up for some lost footage. I have no idea what happened to it. Maybe I didn't push the record button hard enough. I've done that before. What I missed out on showing video-wise, but it is on the blog, so I'll pop some photos in while I natter right here, is that like with the windows needing to go vertically, well, the B-pillar does need to be vertically as well, and it was counted leaning back the same as the windows were going up and down on that angle. And what ended up happening is that even if you had the front door and back door meet here, by the time you got up to the ceiling, then in the top of the window frame and everything, then suddenly the door was appearing through the window. So you couldn't just leave these angled back. So, and then I thought I can come up to here and then straighten the pillar. That was my original thought. But then this is what houses inside the actual B pillar, so it faces this way, the inertia reel. Now that inertia reel is set to guide all the way up on that angle, and you can't, you can't have the mount in space somewhere. So, and it's all done in inside the between the trim and the B pillar. The belt is all hidden. So, but regardless of that, it wasn't going to work. So, what I did is I actually cut through here, cut down here, as well as on this side, but leaving this intact. And what I did is I put some portable shrinker stretchers that I've made on this corner. So here I stretched that flange, which started tilting the whole lot forward. So I had cut around this all free, and then all this could then twist down, and therefore this was tucking in behind the old one, because this is coming down as it's pivoting off the bottom top of this curve here. So as this is going forward, so then I got my B pillar on the back of it straight, because I'm thinking of attaching my hinges here, and so this has to be vertical for the door to open up vertically. Now on the front, what I did is I had to then stretch these. Let me think about that. I had to recurve this to now match this, which had come into a different spot, and it had to be cut shorter to meet up with it. So I'll show you I keep them hanging up here. So it's a set of these that I bought without the stand, and then they come with this is these are the handles they come with, and normally you put them in a vise, and this fits on the back here on the model that I chose, and then you operate like that. Very awkward to do that way. So what I did is I made up out a water pipe, and you can see this plate that which is one of the mounting bolts that were in these, and I just put longer handles on them. So first I just made a shorter one to match the length of the provided upper, but I found you really lacked the leverage. And so I've still got the option of screwing that extension out and just having two short handles if it's a really tight spot. But I just made a new upper handle and a lower one, and then I can choose length. But I have not had to use the shorter option since I've put those together. It's really good. You can lean one of the handles against your body and then pull with the other, and then you get plenty of leverage, and you can tilt that all up. So yeah, so that's how I got the B pillar to come forward. So I'm sorry I'm missing the footage of the whole thing happening. One day there'll be more than the last time I showed. Well, that escalated, didn't it? So, rather than cutting along the bottom, moving that pillar forward, I just went and drilled out all the spot welds and took out 70 millimeters, which is that little strip there, from the front, and so this will just move back forward, moving the B pillar forward 70 mil, and decided I might as well leave this side off, get to the same stage on that side so I can then cut this section out. So the cut line is going to be right along this, right on the edge of that rib there. So that's 170 millimeters, or just short of 7 inches, from there to the edge of that steel there. So not into this face here, but where the old floor was. So I'm going to unpick all those spot welds all the way from one side to the other, then cut all the way along through here from the other side. Then this all moves back up on top of that flange, and that whole lot gets spot weld where I can reach, and then plugged weld for the rest from one side to the other. It's back on the exact factory seam as it was before. The underside of this goes down and under here, so it'll all just be the same as factory. Even through the spot welds through here as well, they're all the same as it was before. So it's just as strong, but I'm actually putting a stronger subframe, don't forget, all the way through here. That's still going to be chassis rails, which is almost twice as thick as what I'm taking out. So, you know, there's more than adequate amount of strength going back in again, and it will be tied together anyway, so you still will end up twice as thick by the time you add this back in again. So, no, I'm not saving weight, but this way I can have a Willis frame underneath this and still have it registered as a 1932 Willis. So, yep, that's the plan so far. All right. This here is the cut line. All the way along there, all the way along there, all the way there, all the way to the other side. Whew. So this whole thing is about to be cut in half. You see I've got a support leg. What I've done is I've welded that to a bracket I made that goes onto the centre bearing mount. So that's just to stop this from falling down. All the structural strength is in the tunnel, so it won't lose shape when it's severed. So the first thing to do is to cut all the way along through there and out the other side, and I'll possibly drag the body back. Then I have to separate all these spot welds. In fact, it might be better to at least grind the heads of all those spot welds first, while I can easily sit in there. 6 of one, half a dozen out of the other. If I can pull this apart far enough, then it saves me being on my knees and doing it. And then what I'll do is trim next to the width of this flange. This flange varies between up to about 50 millimeters. That's how much this flange goes in under here. So it's about 30 or 40 there. Cut a rough cut through there, so it's easier then to get the splitter underneath all the way through and break all those spot welds, rather than trying to cut down from here, which would be a lot harder. Or if you're doing it lying on your back from underneath, you can't see your spot welds from the top, so you're more likely to distort that bottom flange a lot more that way. So I think I'll make 2 cuts, one through here, one through there, then take out all those spot welds. So wish me luck. It's going to be from that edge there to this edge here is 165 millimeters or 6.5 inches. which means the end of the console will be, let me quickly work it, 35 millimeters back from here. So the console is going to end up about here by the time all this moves forward. So it gives you a bit of a gap, it lets the air out each side for the rear passengers, and so it's not hard up against here, because I can go as much as almost 200 mil if I had the back of the console hard against the seat cushion, but I'd rather have a bit of a gap, and really I'm not going to really notice that that little bit of a difference when you're talking such a big wheelbase difference. I measured it today accurately, so from the firewall to the exact centre line on this one versus the Willys is 20 inches difference. So the Willys or Willis from here, from the rear axle centre line to the front, is 20 inches shorter, but it's longer from here to the axle centre line. So I made a quick drawing of it. So overall 500 mil or 20 inch difference. So this is the SRT, this is the Willys, but this is 79 inches, 99 inches, or just over 2.5 meters, just over 2 meters. But from the firewall to the center line of the front axle, this is 21.4 inches. The Willys is 34 inches, which is what, 12.5 inches longer the Willys is from the firewall to the centre line. So the engine is going back, I think, a whopping 18 inches in relationship to the centre line, because I've already moved it back 5.5 inches by pushing the whole engine close to the firewall, and then I've got to move the axle centre line forward. So it's definitely a mid-engine car by the time we're finished. So interesting, nerve-wracking. Tell what, you could see that, but might be able to make the cutout. So just like that, we're over halfway. It doesn't take long to completely sever something in half. Blimey. Whoa, that's right. Wow. We have daylight all the way, just like that. So what I'll do is I'll put a jack with a board under the tunnel, and then pick it up and roll that back and then leave a gap. Alright, got a jack and a lump of 4x4 to brace from one side of the tunnel to the other, and I've just taken the weight off and you can see it's separated now. So I'm hoping that I've got the balance pretty good, and we'll see how we go. Ah, it's hooked. Oh no. Surprise! There we go. I've got the right balance point. Wow, it's a little bit harder than I thought. New plan. See, I've separated it, but it's not balancing very well at all. I don't want to snap it off the trestle. So I think what I'm going to do, the balance point is way further forward because of the weight of the dash and the firewall, is put a timber underneath the centre of the A there from one side to the other and see how we go. Of course the balance point is not where you want it. It's just basically a couple of inches in front of that. So I'm going to very gently, hopefully not break off that leg because it's only tacked on. And see, I have been able to manage to come back a little bit. And we'll see how we go. Oh, sorry. we have success. Look at that. Now to take out the rest of the piece, all those spot welds are along there. It was hard. I couldn't use a laser because this is actually not straight. It's on a slight curve, and you can even see the edge that they've got misalignment on the centre bit versus that, and then it flares out and all that sort of stuff all the way along. That's even got a more misalignment there. So it took me way longer just to draw that line and picking up average spots and putting that curve back in. But I've got critical measurements. It was 390 from the edge of that to the face of that, and I know that, and that's exactly the same on both sides. So once that's removed, I slide that over the top of the flange, and it'll be 165 millimeters or 6.5 inches shorter than that 390 measurement. And I've also taken the measurement from the very top of this to the top of there on both sides, and they were identical. And so that way I'll also take the 165 millimeters off that measurement there, and that way I know it is also straight this way. So it has to be square, so you can take diagonals, and then it also has to have the right tilt and no skew. So that's the hard part, or might go easy, who knows? Time will tell. Alright, quick rough cut, because it's easier when I start grinding all these spot welds out to then get the splitter. There's one of the splitters there, another one over there, each side of the spot weld, and then pop them loose as they're going along, and you can see where to go in. So I've made sure to cut around any brackets that are there, because the new piece will just go on top, because it's spot welded back here, so that remains spot welded to this back structure. You're not disturbing that. And this dog leg is the only thing I had to sort of do differently, is because this step up here and this step up here has to match in with this. So for some reason the floor is that little bit lower in that corner where it isn't on the other side. It's completely flat. Really odd. But so I'm putting it back the way it was. So this edge here will line up that, and that will give me that same radius or end of that joggle back again, and still leave this flat area in here. So structurally it remains the same. So that's the only bit of welding that I'm going to do, and these spot welds will just remain in, factory ones will remain in place, and from here back that whole strip will be removed next. Alright, so everything is prepped. So all these marks are the existing spot welds where I ground them to remove the upper layer. So you can see how smooth that is. I had a 100% success rate of not one of them, the grinding, penetrating the metal underneath. I ended up having to go over the top of the spot weld a bit as well, because this had very shallow spot welds. So I just go down just slightly less than the material thickness you're removing, and the splitter will just take care of the rest. You just got to make sure it's thinner than the metal you're trying to save, and the thin one will give away first. So yeah, I'm going to bring it close for a trial fit first, and then I'll bring in the adhesive sealer to seal the joint before everything gets clamped up. And the reason for the holes they're ready for the plug weld, but this is the furthest reach that I've got with my spot welder. This big old Porter spot here. That actually came from a company that made limos and funeral cars when they went out of business, and that's what they used to, in their case, they'd be putting metal in, making things longer, not shorter. So it does a really good job. Alright, wish me luck. Well, that's a bummer. The slope in the transmission tunnel at the back here is greater than I thought, because even when this is down, as you can see there, we've got a gap under there, good finger depth almost, I reckon. Half inch, 13 mil. So, thinking cap's on. I've got to shrink that edge down to make that pull in all the way around. Might have to do some relief cuts, because that's more than just shrinking the metal is going to do for me. Yeah, probably a couple of relief cuts each side of the corner there, pull it down, weld it back up again when it's in the right position. Bob's your uncle. So, first round, we'll see how it goes. This is really easy to pick up and move because it's balanced on the jack. So I've cut a total of 6 darts if you're in sewing, or wedges, just really thin, just a cut with the cut-off wheel, and as they're closed up, widen the end up a little bit more, and then we'll give this a go and see how it goes. Well, bit of a jump ahead. History of not remembering to take footage or not pushing the record button. So you can see everything's come back together again. You can see just make out where the 6 wedges were cut out. But what I also found was that this flange was not sitting on the same angle to meet it. So I also cut this flange and then pushed it up, which actually spreads it apart, and then I just fully welded it closed onto the underside of that. So it's actually got more weld because you've got plug welds all the way through here, and then you can see I've used a spot welder all the way through there, and you can see some of the sealant and epoxy has pressed out a little bit, and I've also welded in patches where those assembly holes were. I presume that's what they do. I'm only guessing. You can see these plastic plugs here that cover with a bit of sound in. You can see them all over the place. I presume it's something to do with the assembly line and keeping all these parts together. So it came after I also wedged this part and then spread them up to meet, so the angle is all the same. You don't have one sitting at a different angle. It all came together beautifully. Just rolled it in and double checked all my measurements. So remember, from the point of here to the face of that is now 165 or 6.5 inches shorter. Same with there. You can also see where I was talking about that low spot. I don't think it came out very clearly in the video earlier. You can see where they got that ridge that comes along and then suddenly it drops down. But on this side, there is no ridge along this side. So I'm not sure why that has a reinforcement ridge on one side and not the other. But I've terminated in exactly the same spot as it was before and just cut out behind that ridge. So all the floor level and everything stays the same. I've also welded the sides back in. You can see the overlap weld there, which is all spot welded, so that was done in my bead roller, and so you have the same setup as factory. And so these are all back in position with that vertically on the back side, so that the seat belt will go all the way up to the ceiling without showing up in either of the windows, because the door will be vertical, so I couldn't have the sloping pillar as explained earlier. So yeah, everything's back together again. Everything came out millimetre perfect, so I made sure that the measurement from here to that point over there was exactly 165 millimetres shorter on both sides than when I started, and the same with from the floor seat mount to the front face of that. And it all came out exactly, so I know there is no sag in the floor or it's kicked upwards or whatever. It's all exactly the same, and this never moved. This was fully supported on 2 sets of trusses and the front truss, and I had that centre support leg as you saw, and everything just came up. I didn't have to adjust anything, it just slid together, and it all came out beautifully. So here we have a donor shell that is now 6.5 inches shorter than before, and I've still got, and what I've done is I've made sure that the distance from the front of the seat to the back of the pillar is exactly the same as the Grand Cherokee, so I know there is enough room to pass the foot through and into the footwell, and your feet actually, like on that vehicle, tuck underneath the front seat. So, but it's actually deeper from here to the backrest is deeper on this, probably because the fuel tank sits under here, than it is in the other one. So the passengers at the back will actually have more knee room because their hips are further back on the seat than they do my daily driver, so which is the 2010 KK Cherokee. So better to work with something. We knew we didn't want less than that one for room, so we made it to suit, and so with the B pillar moved forward and then the rest of the chopped out behind, we know it is as accessible as our daily, plus more knee room because of the depth, extra depth in the seat. So there you go, it's all back together again, and on to the next part of this build.